Shalom Aleichem and welcome to chapter 17 where we're looking at Hebrew infinitives. Let's start with the basics. An infinitive is a basic form of the Hebrew verb. It's basic because it has no tense, person, gender or number. And so they present a basic form of the Hebrew verb. Their function is to express the idea of the action. And mostly when they're translated in English, you're going to add to. For example, to write, to keep, to judge. And so in translation, they add to. They present the idea of the action without the tense, person, gender, and number. And in Hebrew, there are two kinds of infinitives. We have infinitive construct and infinitive absolute. And among these, the most common is infinitive construct. Now, infinitives are very similar to imperfect tense. In fact, the majority of them are built from the imperfect tense. For example, here, yishpot. Yishpot in the imperfect means he will judge. And when you form infinitives, all you do is simply remove the prefix ye and add preposition le. And that's how majority of infinitives are formed. And so infinitives are very similar to the imperfect tense, to the third masculine plural of the imperfect tense. Remember, the infinitives have no tense, person, gender, and number. They present the idea of the action in its basic form. For example, in the imperfect, it's yishpot. When it forms an infinitive, it becomes lishpot, which means to judge. To judge. No tense, person, gender, or number. Simply presents the idea of the action, to judge. Now let's look at the types. The first type of infinitive is infinitive construct. Remember there are two, we said there are two types. You have infinitive construct and infinitive absolute. And we said among the two, infinitive construct is the most common. It's called infinitive construct because when you're constructing it, it adds prefixes to it. These are prepositions like lamed, kaf, bet, and these are the ones that you add to the infinitive construct when you're constructing it. And among these prepositions, the most common one is lamed, the le preposition. That one is very common. In fact, around 84% of it is going to be with le, preposition le. Now let's look at how the infinitive construct is formed. So the infinitive construct is formed from 3ms, from the imperfect tense third masculine singular. And when you're forming the infinitive construct, you add the preposition le, and between the second and third consonant, you add holem. And so you have le preposition and holem between the second and third consonant. Now let me show you where this is coming from. So the infinitive construct is formed from 3ms, third masculine singular of the imperfect tense. For example, you have the verb in the imperfect yiktov, yiktov. To form the infinitive construct, you remove ye prefix and becomes ketov, ketov. Now to ketov, you simply add le prefix and becomes lektov, lektov. Now because you can't have two shuas starting a word, the first shua is going to go into hirek, and that's why it's going to be lektov, lektov. In the imperfect tense, yikto means he will write, he will write. When it becomes an infinitive, the translation is to write, to write. And so this is how the infinitive construct is built. Le prefix and holem between the second and third consonant. And that would be li, because two shuas cannot begin a word. And so here's identity. You have le prefix, and between the second and third consonant, you're going to have holem. And that is how you know infinitive construct. Now I need to say that sometimes you not have the le prefix, the infinitive constructs that you find without the le prefix, but majority of it, 84% of them are going to be found with le prefix. Let's look at the examples. First example there is lishmor, lishmor, which means to keep. It's coming from shama. Shama means he kept. And so in the infinitive, it's going to be to keep. Next you have meshor, meshor. Now meshor is not having le prefix. As I said it, in most rare cases, you're going to have examples that will not have le prefix, but the translation is still the same. You add to. Meshor is coming from mashal. Mashal means he ruled. And so in the infinitive, meshor means to rule. It means to rule. Another example is lizkor, lizkor. Lizkor is coming from zakar, zakar, which means he remembered. In the infinitive, it's to remember. Next, you have liukot. Liukot. Liukot means to gather. To gather. Comes from the verb lakat. Lakat, which means he gathered. And then you have liktov. Liktov. Coming from katav, he wrote. So the infinitive liktov means to write. So remember the pattern. Most of the times you have le prefix and holem. That holem placed between the second and third consonant. That's the key to identifying infinitive construct. All right, let's look at translation examples. The first passage you have, Wayavarek otam Elohim lemo peru uvu. Wayavarek otam Elohim lemo peru uvu. The infinitive is lemor. Lemor. Now notice lamed is pointed with tzere. Why? Because it's placed before a guttural letter, which is aleph. And so lemor is the infinitive. Another key identifying infinitive is holem, the holem between second and third consonant. So you have lemor. Lemor means to speak. It comes from the verb amar, or he spoke. So in the infinitive, it means to speak. And so the translation you're going to have, God blessed, wayeverech from barak, which means to bless. So you have, and he blessed, otam means them, Elohim means God. So, and God blessed them, lemor. Lemor means to say. This is an infinitive, it means to say. So, and God blessed them to say, peru uvu. Peru means be fruitful. Uvu means and multiply. So, and God blessed them to say, be fruitful and multiply. Lemor means to say, and God blessed them saying, or to say, be fruitful and multiply. So that's how you're going to translate that one. Next we have this phrase, Lishmor et derek et hachayim. Here the infinitive is lishmor. You can tell the form, you have preposition le, and then you have holem between the second and third consonant. And lishmor means to keep or to guard. It means to keep. So you have to keep, and then you have et derek. Derek is where. Etz is tree. Hachayin, you have the definite article ha, which means there, and you have the word chayin from chay, which means life. So the translation is going to be to guard the where. Notice derek is in construct to the word etz, so you have derek of etz, where of the tree of life. Where of the tree of life. So translation is going to be to guard the way to the tree of life. To guard the way to the tree of life. Remember, infinitive constructs are translated as to guard, to say, to walk. That's how they're translated. Let's move on. And next we look at infinitive absolutes. Infinitive absolutes. Remember, there are two kinds of infinitives. We have infinitive construct and infinitive absolutes. Now, infinitive absolutes are used to emphasize a perfect or imperfect verb. And they have two ways of placing them. They can be either placed before a verb, before the perfect or imperfect verb, or after the verb, depending on the function that is playing the sentence. We're going to look at this. But for now, know that the infinitive construct is used to emphasize a perfect or imperfect verb. And the function is going to depend on where it's placed, before or after the verb. And these are called infinitive absolute because they stand absolutely alone. They don't add the preposition le or any other inseparable preposition, but when they are formed, they stand alone. They have no prefixes added to them. Remember, the function is to emphasize a perfect or imperfect verb. Let's look at how they are formed. The cow infinitive absolute has a pattern. When you're forming it, it's formed in this way. Under the first consonant, you're going to have kametz, and between the second and third consonant, you're going to have holem waw. And so you're going to have kametz, holem waw. And so the sound that is created is a-o, a-o. For example, you have zakor, zakor. You have kametz under the first consonant and holem waw between the second and third consonant, zakor. Or this example, haloch, haloch. So zakor means to remember. Haloch means to walk, from the verb halach, which means he walked. So haloch means to walk. Another example is infinitive, katov, katov, which means to write. So the pattern of the infinitive absolute is kametz and holemoa. Kametz under first consonant and holemoa between the second and third consonant. That's how the infinitive absolute is built. Let's look at the function of infinitive absolute. Now, infinitive absolute has three functions, and I say depending on where it's placed, it's going to have three functions. Sometimes it stands before the verb, sometimes it stands after the verb. And the function is based on the position of the infinitive absolute. Let's look at function number 1. If the infinitive absolute is placed before the verb, and this is before the verb of the same root, and these are called cognate roots. So if the infinitive absolute is placed before the verb of the same root, then the function is that it gives emphasis to the verb. I want to repeat, if the infinitive absolute is placed before the verb of the same root, its function is to emphasize the verb. Let's look at this example. And we're going to use the verb tamut. Tamut. Tamut means you will die. Tamut means you will die. Let's look at this example. In Genesis 2:17, you have this phrase, mot tamut. Mot tamut. You have mot and you have tamut. Tamut is a verb. It's an imperfect verb. And then you have the infinitive mot. Remember, infinitive is built by placing the holem. So that holem is your key to the infinitive. So you have mot, which is the infinitive, and you have tamut, which is a verb in the imperfect tense. And we're saying, when the infinitive is placed before the verb, and this is a verb of the same root, you can see mot is coming from mut. Both of them mean to die. But then since you have the infinitive placed before the verb, and both of them are coming from the same root, the function of the infinitive is that it's emphasizing the verb. And so how you translate it is that it's going to be, you will surely die. You will surely die. The word surely there is coming from the infinitive. Instead of saying, to die, you will die, the translation is going to be, you will surely die. And you're going to find versions, Bible versions that translate it as, to die, you will die. That is incorrect. Why? Because the infinitive is emphasizing the verb. And so the correct way of translating it is, you will surely die. You will surely die. Or you will certainly die. That's the correct way of translating infinitive when it's placed before the verb, before the same root. In this case, you have mot tamut. Mot tamut. You will surely die. Another example there is Genesis 2 verse 16. And the phrase says, acho tokhel. Acho tokhel. And you have the infinitive acho. Remember, you have kametz and holemoa between the second and third root. That's a sign of the infinitive absolute. So you have the infinitive absolute standing before a verb in the imperfect tense, tokhel. Both of the words are built from the word to eat. To eat, so they're sharing the root. They're from the same cognate root. And so you're supposed to translate them as, to eat, you eat. But because it's placed before the verb, it's emphasizing the imperfect verb. And so you're going to translate it as, you will certainly eat. You will certainly eat, or you will surely eat. Emphasizing the imperfect verb. And so this is function number 1. When the infinitive absolute is placed before the verb of the same root, it gives emphasis to the verb. Let's look at function number 2. If the infinitive absolute is placed after the verb of the same root, it shows that the action is continuous. It shows that the action is continuous. So the infinitive was placed before the verb, and here we're saying it's placed after the verb. And if it's placed after the verb, it's showing that the action is continuous. Let's look at the examples, and we're going to use the verb shimur. Shimur. Shimur means listen. The first phrase we have, shimu shamua. Shimu shamua. And we have shamua, which is our infinitive. How do we know? It's having kametz under the first consonant, and between the second and third, you have holemoa. So that is a sign of infinitive absolute. So you have shamua. And notice the position, it's coming after the verb, and it's coming after the verb of the same cognate root, of the same root. So in this case, the infinitive, its function is to show that the action of the verb is continuous. Now, shimu, the verb shimu is coming from shama. Shama means he listened or he heard. And so the translation is going to be, keep on listening. Keep on listening. The action of the verb is continuous. Keep on listening. That's how you're going to translate it. The other example is this. Halach, haloch. Halach, haloch. Haloch, that's our infinitive absolute. It has come after the verb. The verb is halach. Halach is from the perfect tense. It means he walked. He walked. And so you have halach, haloch. Haloch is infinitive absolute. And the function of the infinitive absolute here is to show that the action of the verb is continuous. And so the translation is keep on walking. Keep walking or keep on walking. Continuous action. And so when the infinitive absolute is placed after the verb of the same root, it shows that the action of the verb is continuous. And the verb can be, remember, the verb can be in the perfect or imperfect tense. Then we move to function number 3. The infinitive absolute can also be used instead of an imperative to emphasize the command. The infinitive absolute can be used in place of an imperative to give emphasis to the command. Now here we have the imperative zekor. Zekor means remember. It means remember. Now the imperative is the one that is used to give a command. But when you have a case where an infinitive absolute is used in the place of the imperative, in that case, the infinitive absolute is giving emphasis to the command. Let's look at this example. We have Zakor et Yom HaShabbat Lekadsho. Zakor et Yom HaShabbat Lekadsho. Here you have an infinitive absolute standing in place of an imperative. For example, we have this infinitive absolute, Zakor. Zakor means to remember. It means to remember. Now, normally here, you're supposed to have Zekor, which is an imperative, to show command, to give a command. But in Exodus 20 verse 8, you have an infinitive absolute standing in place of an imperative. And when you have an infinitive absolute in the place of an imperative, Hebrew is just trying to say, give emphasis to the command. So here, the command that is being emphasized is a command, remember. And so the command, remember, is emphasized here. Why? Because the infinitive absolute is used in the place of the imperative. We have Zakor et Yom HaShabbat Lekadsho. Zakor, remember. Remember. And so in this place, you're going to translate the infinitive as remember. Instead of saying to remember, you're going to say remember because it's used in place of an imperative. And so you have remember et Yom. Et Yom means the day. Which day? HaShabbat. HaShabbat means the Sabbath. Lekadsho is coming from the word kadosh. Kadosh means holy. So you have remember the Sabbath day. Yom means day. HaShabbat is Sabbath, the Sabbath. Lekadsho. So you have to keep it holy. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. What is the use of the infinitive absolute here? Remember, if the infinitive absolute is used instead of an imperative, the function is that it's giving emphasis to the command. And so here you have infinitive absolute zakor, which is used in place of zekor, which is imperative. And so the function here is that it's giving emphasis to the command. And the command is remember. And so the meaning is this. Make sure you remember to keep the Sabbath day holy. Why? Because emphasis is given to the word remember, to the command remember. And that's the function of infinitive absolute. When it's used in place of the imperative, emphasis is given to the command. Let's look at infinitive absolute examples. First one is Genesis 18 verse 10. You have the phrase Wayomea shov ashuv elecha. And that phrase means, I will surely return to you. I will surely return to you. Why am I saying I will surely return to you? Because you have an infinitive absolute standing before. Notice the position. Position is very important. It's standing before its cognate root. standing before the same root. You have shuv, ashuv. And we said when the infinitive absolute is standing before the cognate root, the function is that it's giving emphasis to the verb. And so the translation is going to be, I will surely return to you. Emphasis is given on ashuv. Ashuv means return. I will surely return to you. Elecha, to you. So translation is going to be, and he said, I will surely return to you. Let's look at the second one. Vayomer Moshe el ha'am zakor et hayom hazeh. And in this phrase we have the infinitive absolute, zakor. We have zakor. And zakor in this case is used in place of an imperative, in place of zakor. And so the phrase is, Vayomer Moshe, and Moses said, et ha'am, and Moses said to the people, remember zakor, remember this day, et hayom hazeh. Hazeh means this, remember this day. And since the infinitive absolute here is standing in place of the imperative, the function is that it's emphasizing the word remember. It's emphasizing the action. It's giving emphasis to the command. And the command is remember. Zakor, remember. And so Moses is saying, remember, make sure you remember this day. That's the function there. The last phrase we have, Ki beyom achaucha mimenu mot tamot. And here we have the infinitive absolute, mot. And it's standing before its cognate root, tamot. You have mot, tamot. You have mot, tamot. And by hearing, you can tell they're coming from the same root, mot, tamot. And so the infinitive is mot. And because it's standing before its cognate, it's giving emphasis to the verb. Then the verb is tamut. And tamut means, it means to die. And so the translation is going to be, for in the day, ki beyom. Ki means because or for. It means for. For beyom, for in the day. Achaucha. That means you eat. For in the day that you eat of it, mimenu, of it or from it, mot tamut, you shall surely die, or you will surely die, you will certainly die. That infinitive absolute, mot, is giving emphasis to tamut. It's emphasizing tamut. So in translation, you're going to say, you shall surely die. Mot tamut. So that's the function of infinitive absolute. That's very important in exegesis. That's very important in exegesis. So this is what we said on infinitive absolute. There are three functions. Number one, when an infinitive absolute stands in front before its cognate verb, the function is that it's emphasizing the verb. So you're going to add surely before the verb. You're going to say surely, you shall surely die. Number two, when the infinitive absolute comes after the cognate verb, the purpose is that it's showing continuity, it's showing a continuous action. And the third function is this, when the infinitive absolute is used in place of an imperative, the function is that it's emphasizing the command. It's giving emphasis to the command. These are the three functions of infinitive absolute. Alright, let's look at passing. Let's look at how to pass infinitives. Now here's the most important thing. Infinitives have no person, they have no gender or number. Infinitives have no person, gender or number. So when you're passing, you're going to simply say whether it's infinitive construct or infinitive absolute. And then you give the lexical form and translation. Let's look at the examples. The first example we have naton. Naton. Now naton, look at how it's spelled. It's having kametz and holemual. Kametz and holemual. That is a sign of infinitive absolute. Infinitive absolute. So you're going to have cow infinitive absolute from the word natan. From the word natan. And naton, the infinitive naton means to give. The translation of naton means to give. And here's the point. Because you don't have context, all infinitives are going to be translated as to dwell, to for, to call, to judge, to give. Why? Because you do not have context. Context is the one that shows you whether it's emphasizing a verb or it's used in place of an imperative. But because you don't have context, you're going to translate the infinitive as to. in its basic form. To give, to walk, to eat, just like that. So naton means to give. Next we have lishkon. Lishkon. Now notice you have preposition le, and shkon is coming from shakan. It's coming from the verb shakan. Shakan means he dwelt. So the infinitive lishkon means to dwell. And because of the le, that means it's infinitive construct, because construct is the only one that places preposition le before the verb. So when you see preposition le on an infinitive, just know that infinitive is infinitive construct. Alright, so we have lishkon, and that is cow infinitive construct. And the infinitive lishkon means to dwell. Lishkon means to dwell. Next we have nafor. Nafor. Now, nafor is infinitive absolute. Nafor is infinitive absolute. Now, you might have thought it's infinitive construct, but remember, infinitive construct adds le preposition, and it's only absolute that adds kametz and holemwao. So when you see kametz, holemwao, kametz under the first consonant, and holemwao between the second and third consonant, that is infinitive absolute. And that is coming from nafao, and so the infinitive construct nafor means to fall. Nafor means to fall. Next we have likro, from the verb kara. Kara means he called. It means he called. And so the infinitive construct likro means to call. It's construct because it's having preposition le, and so likro means to call. Call infinitive construct. And finally we have shefot. Shefot. Shefot is cow infinitive construct from shafat, and shefot means to judge. Now remember, we said sometimes the cow infinitive construct is not going to have le prefix. So sometimes it's not going to have le prefix, as in this case, shefot, which means to judge, to judge. And so this is how you pass infinitives. Let's look at chapter 17 vocabulary. Let's look at some words that you find in chapter 17. We start with the nouns. The first one is beged. Beged. Beged means garment. And then we have bekor. Bekor. Bekor means firstborn or first fruit. And then we have bakar. Bakar. That means head or kettle. And then we have boker. Boker. And boker means morning. Boker means morning. When you want to say good morning, you say boker tov, good morning. Boker means morning. And then we have gevu. Gevu. Gevu means border or boundary. Border or boundary. And then we have door. Door. And that means generation. Generation. Still on the nouns, we have chayu. Chayu. That means power, strength, or wealth. Chayu means power, strength, or wealth. Then we have chalom. Chalom. And that means dream. And then we have chesed. Chesed. And that means loyalty. It means faithfulness, kindness, loving kindness. Chesed means loyalty or kindness. And then we have kanaf. Kanaf. Kanaf means wing or edge or extremity. Kanaf means wing. And then we have kaf. Kaf. Kaf means palm. Palm. Palm of the hand. Still on the nouns, we have lashon. Lashon. Lashon means tongue or language. Lashon means tongue or language. And then we have nahar. Nahar. Nahar means river. It means river. And then we have erev. Erev. Erev means evening. And if you want to say good evening, you say erev tov. Erev tov. Good evening. We come to the verbs. First one we have avad. Avad. Avad means he perished. He perished. Next we have chalam. Chalam. Chalam means he dreamed, from the word chalom, meaning dream. Next one we have khana, khana, khana. Khana means he camped. He encamped, he surrounded, he laid siege. Surrounding a city, laying siege. Next one we have lakhad, lakhad. Lakhad means he caught or he captured. He caught or he captured. Next we have naga, naga. Naga means he touched. Naga means he touched or he struck. Next we have nagash, nagash. Nagash means he approached. Next we have rava, rava. Rava means he multiplied. He multiplied. And finally we have shata, shata. Shata means he drank. Shata means he drank. All right. Practice, practice, practice. Later out.